Hey guys, how you doing? This is JP Saricolia coming to you again with another episode of Age of Heroes. And in today's podcast, I would like to talk about something that I just read, something that is going through the news, and it's that Disney pushing for the Oscars, Black Panther over Infinity War at the Oscars, for all the categories. They're pushing for a lot of different categories. If I'm not mistaken, around 16, and they're only doing one for Infinity War, just for special effects, which is interesting. And I'm okay with it. I don't have a problem with it. Of course, it has created a backlash, and a lot of people are very unsatisfied on social media. They're talking bad about Disney. They say that they're doing this because they want to be very PC. They're just trying to alleviate or trying to just to bring forward a lot of social justice warriors, and they try to make it for them and blah 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 blah. So you heard all this commentary and people saying, well, Black Panther was a bad movie, Infinity War was a much better film, and they goes on in this in this rants on social media, which everyone is entitled to their opinion, so I'm okay with that. But I want to share my personal take on this, and for that I want to go back to the films themselves. And then we'll talk about the Oscars and everything else. Personally, I did like Black Panther. In my opinion, Black Panther was a very good film. It was a phenomenal film. It's inspired on Panther's Rage. I want to point that out. If you ask me today, which one is my favorite Marvel story of all times? There's plenty. There are plenty of stories that I love. But if you ask me what is the one I consider the best written story, graphic novel from Marvel Comics, I will tell you is Panther's Rage. A very underrated story that a lot of people do not know, but one that changed the course for Black Panther. Not only that, one that was a seed that was planted in the midst of Marvel in the 70s that really changed the way a lot of these characters were created and a lot of stories. Back in the 70s. At some point, I will get to review Panther's Rage. Beautiful story written by Don McGregor. Beautiful drawn by a few artists, particularly Billy Graham. It was phenomenal. It was a great story. It's a phenomenal story. And they used that as inspiration for the film. So when you watch the film, if you have read the story, that I highly recommend it, you will see the similarities. A lot of similarities. Of course, there's changes that have been made, a lot of other things, and the other things that have been applied to the story to be more modern, also to be alongside other runs like the Priest run. But in my opinion, of course, just watching the movie is very clear. The visual inspiration, the story inspiration, and Don McGregor suffered a lot with writing the story, coming up with the story back in the day. That was the first Marvel graphic novel before there was the concept of graphic novels, before the war was ever used. That was actually the first Marvel graphic novel, a 13-issue, a story that has a beautiful conclusion from beginning to end. You can see the action and everything has been, how it gets to that point. And he suffered a lot of backlash, not only from a lot of fans that they were unhappy with Marvel allowing stories with only black people, but also from a lot of people within Marvel that were very unsatisfied with the take in a time, of course, of a lot of racism in America, a time where, there was never a story just from Marvel Comics that just include a whole black cast in Africa, in the middle of jungle action comics. So, I highly recommend it. But of course, they used that as inspiration for this film. And in my opinion, it's a phenomenal film. I really have a fun time with Black Panther, not only because of because of the movie, because of the stories that are inside. There's some deep meaning in this story. I found it very deep, very mature. And when I mean mature, I'm not talking about, the rating. I'm talking about the level of understanding. It talks about parents. It talks about fathers and sons. It talks about responsibility. It talks about, standing for what's right. It even talks about racism, but not only a racism toward, accusing, white people of racism. It's about ourselves towards our own people, in this case, talking about black people. So it's an internal view. And I post a review. You can look at that on my Facebook. I might as well, I put a link on it. If you're watching YouTube, you'll see my link there. But yes, it talks about it. It's a very meaningful story that I highly enjoy. However, a lot of people didn't like it. I didn't like it. Now, but that's just them. This is just talking about me. And of course, Infinity War. Now I'm talking about the reviews, kind of. Infinity War was a great movie. It was phenomenal, based on, of course, on one of the most famous storylines, in Marvel Comics, and the Infinity Gauntlet. And, and it's understandable that it was very, popular, and a lot of people went to watch it. And it was fun and all that. I loved it visually, but particularly the fights, the scenes, when people are jumping against each other. It was just phenomenal. It was just fantastic. I really loved it. It was great. However, the only problem that I have with the film is the fact that you feel that even though it's a long, epic story, there's no conclusion in the movie, in the end. At the end of the film, of course, you're left with a cliffhanger that didn't feel like a cliffhanger. And all of a sudden, we have to watch part 2. So it's not like you can really determine this film as one, because there's no ending in the movie. There's no ending. So it's not a full movie, even though it's so beautifully, even though it's very more mature than everything the Avengers did before. It felt more compelling, the story, there's a lot of stakes, there's everything, there, all the superheroes and all of that. It did feel long at some times, and, there were so many different stories well put together. I can tell you this, a lot of things that I can give that to the kudos to the director and the producers and everyone that was involved in the creation of the film, because being able to bring all this cast together into one single film is a daunting task. It's a big challenge, and they did it. But unfortunately, the movie is not a complete film. This is just part 1, and we still need to see part 2 to really determine the end story of the film. And that's the part where I can say that I feel that that's the big difference. Yes, they're great movies, but of course, Black Panther can be a self-contained story, in itself. While, Infinity War is still, it's part A. And we still need to see part B. So in my opinion, I think Disney's doing the right thing, but just pushing the one that it can be just left alone, the standalone movie versus the one that is just the first half of another film. So this is just my opinion, of course. I feel that Disney is doing the right thing by pushing the one that actually had a lot of praise and a lot of is critically acclaimed and gathers so much money, brought so many people. And of course, that triggers a lot of people, particularly people that they feel that they don't have, the black people never suffer. And I want to get a little bit political here. A lot of people, particularly in this part of the world, unfortunately, even though I live in America and I love America and I consider it the best country in the world, there's still a lot of racism in this country. There's still a lot of racism all over the world. Where people assume that, and they think, black people, they did it to themselves. I hear all the time, they did it to themselves. They're doing it to themselves. They don't, they have freedom. Why is it that they need this type of movies? In my opinion, how many white superhero characters we have seen so far? How many we have seen? How many black of them? How many of them they have their own solo movie? Yeah, you can say, well, we have this character, but how many of them? So I'm sorry when people feel offended and they feel like, oh, you're attacking my race, because of this, the white race or the Caucasian race or whatever you want to call it. I feel that we're all the human race at the end of the day. And, we have different differences in our culture and differences in our, maybe in our color skin. But that doesn't mean that we all part of the one. So we have to kind of be, not just selective, but we have to be open for other people to also be brought to the front, especially those that haven't seen that. I was glad to watch Black Panther. I went to watch Black Panther. There were a lot of people there, a lot of families, a lot of black people that normally don't like comic book stories, but people they just saw it and they felt themselves represented. And it's good when we see representation. It's good when we see that. And so, comic book stories should be that. The sad part is that a lot of people that are not into comic books are now determining, or they're telling us how we need to live and how we need to do these things and how social media should play out. I understand there's a lot of PC stuff on social media, and believe me, I feel that there's a lot of things that shouldn't be there. But when it comes about stories like this, when we are bringing people to the front, people that have, for the longest, have been cast out, at least on some of these films and these roles, I have no problem with it. I think that, I'm all for it. I would like to see more of these characters to be played out. I want to see more black characters, more, Hispanic characters, more Asian characters, you name it, anyone. I want to see more of this, cultures and races represented all over social media, in this case on the movies. And I think the movie is doing it the right way. Yes, you might say that one is better than the other, and you're using your personal preference. But in my opinion, the people, and there's something that I heard, my coworkers, people that I know, my friends, and people that, social media, the people that really understood Black Panther, many of them, they saw it from their own personal perspective. You see every movie from your personal perspective. A lot of people, they praise Black Panther, they love Black Panther, they saw it from their perspective of being black, from the perspective of being a minority, from the perspective of being somebody that being cast out, from the perspective of somebody that didn't grow up with a father, from the perspective of all those people, they saw it from that. So it went internal. Now, Infinity War, it talks about, it's a story that is more fictional in many, many different ways. Of course, we're talking about two stories that are fictional, but in many ways, it was all about a story where you see a war unfolding, and it went kind of deep on the sense of what Thanos was. He's trying to kind of put Thanos on the forefront and kind of making human. And he changed a little bit of the story of actually who Thanos was. If you know Infinity War, it changes some of the elements of the Infinity War, the Infinity Gauntlet. It changes some of those elements. To accommodate to people, to make it a more loving character or a more accepting character so people could love him, because nowadays it seems that everyone loves villains. But, in any case, that's a theme for another podcast. But it just kind of changed that. I'm not saying that it was a bad film. I loved it, and I'm going to love it even more when they come with a second part and when I see everything as a whole. But in my opinion, Black Panther as a standalone film, as a complete film from beginning to end, was a much better film, more enjoyable experience at the end that what really Infinity War was, because there's no ending. And if you leave it like that in the ending, like you said that that's the perfect film, in my opinion, I would say that you're kind of strange or you're kind of weird, because in my opinion, just seeing someone committing suicide, genocide, and just being done with it, to me, it's like, okay, it's like watching a documentary of Hitler and just ending on when, pretty much he took over all Europe, and be done with it and be happy with it. The best part of Second World War II, in my opinion, was the fact that there was an ending to it and the Nazis didn't win. The good guys win. So one. So in my opinion, I feel that that's the way I see it. I want to see stories with the good guys win, and I think Black Panther shows that. At the end of the day, it's a story where there's a message of openness towards other people and helping others, and it has a good message. Well, the message is not as clear on Infinity War at the end as a film. So yes, when you talk about the Oscars, there's always going to be a lot of PC. There's going to be a lot of things there that you might not like, and you know what? That just because they won an Oscar doesn't mean that it's a better film or not. They have their own ways to do things. In my opinion, that doesn't change the fact that these movies are successful, regardless of what it is. I like them both. I'm happy for both. I believe that they're pushing Black Panther now, and I'm sure that when Infinity War, the second part, comes out, they're going to push that one as well. And because now you can see it as a whole film. So, at the end of the day, we all win. So, if we feel offended about something, then we need to look at the inside and see what is causing the offense. Do we feel attacked by others because of our race? Do we feel that people trying to shame us because of what our ancestors did? We have to learn, and we have to grow, and we have to mature, and we have to see ourselves. We all, whether we accept it or not, we are a bit racist. I am a bit racist. I can admit it. I'm racist towards other people that are not my people. I'm Hispanic, and sometimes I have seen and noticed that my ways, the way I express myself by other people, represents who I am, and really shows some areas in my life that need change. If we want to change, we want the world to be a better place, we need to look inside ourselves and find the things that need change. And when we see that, then we can see other people. And we need to see other people, not from our judgmental eyes of what we see or stereotypes. We have to see them, face value. You have to see them as for who they are. It's the only way that we can, improve the quality of this world. And we can see less and less and less of these arguments that are unnecessary that permeate everything we do everywhere we go. So, with this episode, I just leave you thinking. I just want to leave that thought to you for you to consider. Look at yourself and see, is there an area in my life that needs change? Am I being too judgmental to other people? I'm not open to them. What is it that makes me who I am? Why do I get angry when things like this happen? Why do I get angry? Why do I get offended? Am I right to be offended? It's good to always internalize that. It's good to always ask those questions. That way we can clear out and we can drain and we can, filter all the things in our lives that are not there helping us to be better people or to grow, as persons. So with that, I'll just leave it like that. I thank you for taking the time to listen to my podcast. Don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe and share the video. Share this podcast with your friends. And if you want to support this channel, you want to support my podcast, consider just supporting me to Patreon. I'll have the links below. So take care, my friends. God bless you, and I'll talk to you again. Bye-bye.